Okay, welcome to the AIGA Speaker Series. I'm Helen Young, President Emeritus of AIGA Colorado. I want to thank the Denver Art Museum and the Denver Design Council for sponsoring this event and providing this wonderful venue for it. We have a couple of events coming up in the next few weeks. Tomorrow is, for students, we have Design Slam, which is a creative competition. The winner receives a one-year subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud, and we have winners every round, so the students really get into this. It's super fun, a little bit stressful, but you know, design is a little bit stressful and fun. So that's happening tomorrow for our students. We also have a proven event for our seasoned professionals tomorrow with Louise, who's going to be presenting tonight. She'll be talking intimately over a nice lunch at Humboldt Fish Farm and Wine about mining design history right in our communities. That should be an interesting topic. I believe there may still be 1 or 2 tickets available to that, so check the website. We also have a few other events coming up. If you're new to Colorado, which a lot of us are, there's a welcome wagon on November 7th here in Denver at Upstairs Circus. It's going to be making and mimosas. So that can be a very interesting combination, I think. Upstairs Circus is a craft, studio. You've probably noticed that we are truly a state chapter, and we have a couple of events coming up in our Boulder city. James Puckett on November 12th is a Boulder type designer that we're featuring, and you can look for more information on our website about his event in Boulder. We also have Shop Talk in Colorado Springs on November 5th, so I'm scooting around a little bit on dates here, but we're featuring Greg Lutz of VSCO, which is an art and technology company with experimental projects, so that should be kind of an interesting talk. So again, look on our website for all the details and to register for those events. We also are having our next speaker event will be right back here in Denver at the Denver Art Museum on Thursday, November 19th, where we'll feature Lucille Tenazas. So that will be a very interesting talk as well. With those events in mind, let's get on with the one for this evening. I have Jenny Taylor, our speaker series, to announce.
Hi, everybody. Yay. Thanks for coming. So I just recently listened to Debbie Millman's interview with Louise, which is fantastic. You guys should check that out on Design Matters. And she did this great introduction of this trifecta of Louise, which is an educator, an author, and the principal of her own design firm. So I thought I'd just totally steal it and use that. So she is an educator. She teaches at CalArts. She has been the co-director as well as the director. She has obviously written this fabulous book that I'm calling EMFRCGTD, which is great. I know, maybe try it. EMFRCGD. And then, of course, 1936 to 1986, which is fantastic. And she also has written for numerous publications. And then she is a principal of her own design firm called LSD. And the perfect example of that is this first cover, if you guys don't have it. Isn't it LSD? Anyone? Yes? It's really trippy. Yes, so she is here. Like, why did we bring this California girl here to Colorado to speak about California design? She said in an interview that there was an independent spirit that was less about following and more about defining. And I just found that to be very relevant to Denver and to Colorado. I think we like to define things, and we define ourselves as designers. And I also feel that we have a lot of these design cliches, the California and Colorado. For instance, you know, the oranges in California, cowboys in Colorado. Anyone else have any cliches? Mountains, I know. It's like the Portlandia thing. It's like put a bird, put a mountain on it, put avocado on it. So I thought that was really relevant too. And then also, she's going to be giving away, or we're going to be giving away 3 of her books after the talk, so make sure you stay around for that. She can sign them, and she's going to be answering questions, which would be great. And then also, if you haven't got your book yet, you can go to artbook.com and use the code Denver40 and you get 40% off the book. So that's fantastic. So if you haven't done that yet, do that right away. I think it expires at the end of the month. Is that what the publisher? I think it was the end of the month. We'll just say the end of the month. So just a few more weeks. So do that. And let's welcome Louise Sandhaus to Denver and to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Anybody? Last chance to come on down here. It's lonely. Thanks to all of you who came out on this rainy evening. It's good to see some friendly faces. I want to thank Jenny for inviting me and AIGA Colorado. I'm really honored to be here. I'm here to talk to you about a place that many of us celebrate for an expanse of reasons, California. Mention this place, and in the popular imagination, a cascade of cliches come to mind. Happy-go-lucky, sun-drenched, color, gleeful, blonde beach babes, blue-skied, surf's-up dude hang 10, explosive red magenta, technicolor sunsets, and where, according to Frank Lloyd Wright, everything loose lands. Or, as environmentalist and controversial writer Edward Abbey described, there is science, logic, reason, and then there is California. This clip from the television comedy classic Saturday Night Live also says it with perfect eloquence.
The Californians.
So, for the party, each guest has their name written on a sand dollar. That's genius, right?
Did everyone RSVP?
As it stands, when it comes to California graphic design, the cliches turn to the squiggled and splotched new wave of the 80s, or the psychedelic posters of the 60s. But beyond that, a concept of a California graphic design usually leads to blank stares. The subject of so many affectionate jabs, how could there have nothing been written about this larger-than-life state's graphic gold? A state that's so much more than its cliches. But then what is California graphic design? Last November, this 416-page book that I spent over 10 years researching, writing, designing, came out, hoping to answer that question. So that's this monster right here. The first inkling of this adventure began in the late 1990s when I was working on a mega exhibition about California art for the LA County Museum of Art. It was then that I heard a quote, harking back to the 1960s, by artist Billy Al Bankston, that went something like, "Fuck New York, fuck Europe, we'll figure out what art is." Then I found this book by the architectural historian Rainer Banham, and Billy Al Bankston's provocation began to resonate in new ways. In the book's introduction, Banham relates that there was no conventional way for him to tell the tale of Los Angeles's particular brand of the built environment. Thus, he would have to invent one. He goes on to concoct all sorts of wacky and imaginative categories by which he might make sense of this multifaceted environment. Ones that he described in colorful terms like suburbia, Smogville, and Dream Factory of the Western world. I like to think that the same witty, zestful categories could equally be conceived for the rest of California. But the printed word was still insufficient for Banham's aim of making sense of the city about which he said, "It makes nonsense of history and breaks all the rules." About a year after the book, The film Rayner Branham Loves Los Angeles was released, in which Branham navigates a crazy quilt of Los Angeles in a talking Ford Torino.
That's Los Angeles. You can always recognize it by ease. And that's me, Rayner Branham, crossing the road. I'm Professor of the History of Architecture at University College London. And you might wonder what I'm doing in Los Angeles, which makes nonsense of history and breaks all the rules. Well, I love the place with a passion that goes beyond sense or reason.
I love that groovy type by Deborah Sussman. Like Branham, I was confronted by trying to tell a tale for which no conventional mode of relating history seemed appropriate. What follows are a few things I thought about in approaching this project and how these ideas informed the book. First was the challenge of where to begin and where to end. It was when I first encountered this book by music impresario and amateur graphic designer Merle Armitage that something fully sparked. This publication that Armitage designed in 1936 on the modernist composer Igor Stravinsky suggested to me some remarkable break from graphic design traditions and perhaps a left turn in graphic design production taking place in the sunny climes of the western frontier, and one breaking the myth, at least in my mind, that only the European avant-garde carried out such iconoclastic visions, particularly ones that redefined the reading experience. What was so wild, woolly, and wonderful was that this book starts on the cover and opens with a hyperbole of 8 celebrity portraits of Stravinsky shot by the young Edward Weston. It was 50 years later that April Greiman's Does It Make Sense issue of the journal Design Quarterly emerged. Here Greiman takes a gentle dagger to the sacred heart of graphic design traditions, turning magazine into poster, making herself the subject, and nude no less, and defining and embracing a new and unfamiliar aesthetic of computer-processed imagery. Does it make sense? Yes, to those who weren't looking for sense in the usual places, with the usual logic and the usual aesthetics. For me, it provided a tidy 50-year bookend to Merle Armitage's opening salvo of what might distinguish California graphic design daring do, although absolutely not the end of a vast story that continues today. Next, I had to get over what I thought a history book should be. In my mind, that was either a comprehensive and serious historical overview, everything important from then to now, or a compendium, a concise anthology of important people. For earthquakes, instead, I chose 4 departure points that were magnets for captivating work and conversation. The first section is Sun-Baked Modernism. What happened to modernism in California? A few examples include Bjorn Aronson's colorful silk-screened poster for the Disneyland Hotel, suggesting a design mashup of forms churned through the Disney machine that allows Gothic type and Bauhaus-influenced compositions to gleefully occupy the same space. These book covers by Alvin Lustig, well known in the graphic design canon for introducing conceptual approaches to book covers he created for New Directions between 1946 and 1953. It was also Lustig who in 1947 composed the essay California Modern, in which he interrogates what this particular brand of design might be. His conclusion is that it is design unbounded from traditions, set loose to find forms appropriate to both the environmental and psychological conditions particular to this new territory. Lou Danziger, another designer of international acclaim, was first introduced to modern design in New York before relocating to California. With fellow transplant and Chicago-based New Bauhaus-trained Alan Porter, they created photogram experiments, bringing a modern zing to dull industrial lighting. These ads were part of a series that appeared between 1949 and 1953 in Arts and Architecture magazine. They were among the few projects at the time on the West Coast that fully embraced modern design, at a time when graphic designers using the modernist idiom struggled to make a living. A&A not only put California on the global art and architecture map, but more locally created an appetite for modern form, giving Danziger and his colleagues projects that helped them not only survive, but thrive. The design and arts and architecture itself has received attention for its own design, beginning with the logo designed by Alvin Lustig. Less discussed as a hefty contribution are John Follis's poetic covers that he created for the publication between 1950 to 1957. Follis, better known for his iconic architectural pottery, nonetheless was a formidable graphic designer, thanks to the more holistic and inclusive approach to design that he and many other California graphic designers were introduced to in classes taught by Lustig. The second theme, or departure point, is industry in the Indies. Among types of design native to California, motion graphics found a particularly happy home. Beginning with experimental and avant-garde filmmakers, the Indies, they developed new and expressive visual languages for the screen. It was this work that evolved into the Hollywood industry of TV titles and film titles, commercials, and later electronic games. In the mid-40s, the artist John Whitney, with his brother James, realized a drawing machine cobbled from outmoded analog military computers. With this device, the hacker artists / filmmakers were able to automate the drawings of hundreds of animation cells. It was some of these drawings that saw Bass, working with Whitney, used for the abstract spiraling effects in Alfred Hitchcock's 1958 film Vertigo. In 1960, Whitney formed Motion Graphics, Inc. Yes, he was the one who coined the term motion graphics. His new company's promotional reel catalog demonstrated the beginning of computer-generated graphics that would forever change Hollywood and design. Taking television commercials several leaps and bounds forward, was producer-director Robert Abel, with his partner Con Pedersen, a special effects designer known for co-creating the legendary Stargate sequence for the production studio that created 2001: A Space Odyssey. Robert Abel and Associates in the 1970s, along with graphic designer Richard Taylor, created TV advertisements of such resounding visuality and invention that they often outshined anything else on the screen. Those works included the 7-Up Bubbles commercial produced in 1975. Here's that unforgettable 60 seconds.
7-Up, 7-Up, we see the light of 7-Up.
We couldn't have made it through the day without something to show the way, without something to keep us going.
And you can't make it through the night if you don't have some kind of light that's showing.
7-Up, 7-Up, we see the light of 7-Up, 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 we see the light of 7-Up, 7-Up.
So just a reminder, that was not created with a computer. Playing an important role in Robert Abel's circle was the ad agency creative director, Chris Blum. Blum served as a creative tornado, yes, they have those too in California, to many of Abel's and others' fantastical creative storms that graced the small screens of the 1970s, including several commercials for Levi's. For this particular commercial, entitled Evolution, Blum worked with illustrator Heidi Endemann, who was responsible for realizing such witty characters as Buckman, who had Levi's for antlers.
What if man had turned out differently? Then where would he wear Levi's stay-pressed slacks or Levi's fashion jeans? Would he put Levi's herringbone on his fins? Levi's stripes on his wings? How could he enjoy Levi's flares with Dacron polyester? What would he put in the pockets of our stay-pressed bush jeans? What would he do with Levi's hopsack? Come to think of it, if man had turned out differently, would there even be a Levi's? There would have been no 1850 gold rush, no man named Levi Strauss, no need for him to invent the world's toughest pair of pants. Men, we're glad you walk on 2 legs. Otherwise, you'd never get the chance to wear a pair of Levi's.
Another important California contribution to motion graphics is computer game design that began at Atari. In 1980, game developer Dave Thurr created the 8-bit extravaganza video arcade game Tempest. Using an extremely limited graphic palette, Thurr nonetheless managed to produce what hardcore gamers reverently refer to as, quote, one of the most innovative and beautiful video games ever made, unquote. Note that this is a very short clip I'm going to show, so I'm looping it several times and it has no sound. The third of the 4 sections is 60s alt 60s. What else besides those psychedelic posters was going on? Little known and under-recognized were the thousands of album cover designs by Pate Francis, working with the photography studio Garrett Howard. As art chantry designer and design critic provocateur described, the team, quote, invented so many style genres that they may be the single greatest pop culture innovators of all time. Launched in 1966, The Oracle was just one example of many 60s counterculture underground publications. The newspaper became known for its prolific use of the split fountain printing technique, where multiple colors of ink share the same tray. So it's not just a special filter or device that you can use in Illustrator. It was a technique that was more likely originated in France. The newspaper made popular what would become the ubiquitous design signifier of both the 60s and California. Often, visual and craft innovation came out of necessity. In this case, from the hands of people untrained and working fast for a cause. So it was with the communications company, or Comco as they were known, the printing and sometimes design arm of the 1960s San Francisco utopian collective known as the Diggers. After acquiring the latest duplication equipment, the group figured out a way to produce colorful flyers from limited means, pushing the equipment beyond any imaginable capacity. Their output achieves a level of artistry that can only be born of sheer enthusiasm. The final section is California Girls. Girls in California can be traced back to a fantasy narrative from the dawn of the 16th century by Spaniard Garci Ordóñez de Montalvo, in which a mythical land is described as home to a race of Amazonians ruled by Queen Calafia. She was, as the author who penned this tale describes, quote, the most beautiful of all of them, of blooming years, and in her thoughts desirous of achieving great things, unquote. So maybe this myth isn't so far from reality, since more than anywhere else, California women seem to thrive and prosper, gaining global influence in unusual numbers. In the 1950s, Margaret Larson took a job at Joseph Magnin, what was the hip department store of its time, an image she helped to cultivate, teamed with an in-house advertising manager and a talented fashion illustrator. The threesome transformed fashion advertising into bold, colorful, dynamic ads. Most significantly, they answered to no one, not what merchandise to push, or how to do it, or what it looked like. How's that for utopia? Sister Corita Kent took the flotsam and jetsam of daily life, including advertising messages, and invested the banal with the spiritual and profound through her striking silkscreen compositions. Her art, teaching, and social activism had reverberating national influence that continues to inspire today. Corita herself was inspired by the Balinese credo, quote, we have no art, we do everything the best we can. Finally, there's Sheila de Bretteville. For this issue of Arts and Society that she co-edited and designed, she created a fictional record of the conversation between CalArts provost and one of his friends during the 10-year period after the school opened in 1961. The result reflects tensions between de Bretteville's modernist design education at Yale and her interest in a more everyday production and in everyday materials, as well as tensions between influences shaping this experimental art school against a backdrop of social tensions such as civil rights activism and the Altamont rock concert. Once I figured out the four-part structure, then I considered how people are reading now. While a sustained argument has an important place, my interest was more about ways of learning about a subject by dipping into different sources, comparing and contrasting different voices, and especially through those 1,000 words that images are said to speak. I still wanted to tell a weighty tale, just to find another way to accomplish that end. Rather than the single authoritative text, the book offers multiple entry points and different ways to experience the subject matter. Each section begins and ends with picture postcard images of California's landscapes to remind the reader of a diverse physical context and offer a wink towards the popular images that have left indelible impressions of the state in the popular imagination. These images are juxtaposed by snapshots of the designers included in the book, most often in the personal contexts of their own workspaces. A quote from literature or popular culture offers an outsider's view of California as an incarnation of absurdity. While the authors meant them pejoratively, the book instead celebrates these cold-eye observations, turning them into proud mottos. And these quotes also offered an opportunity for Jens Gelhar, the book's typeface designer, to strut some font stuff. An introduction by me contextualizes the design work included in the section and elaborates on the section theme, hopefully providing useful insights into the examples that follow. Also, I wanted flavorful writing to be as tasty as the visual treats that followed. Original essays by Lorraine Wild, Michael Worthington, and Denise Gonzalez Crisp offer fresh perspectives on the different themes while giving a nod to new forms of writing, of design history writing. These colorful essays illuminate new perspectives and different tangents of observations about California graphic design. Where most scholarly books reference important and influential historical sources in footnotes or in the bibliography, some of these references are instead reproduced, doing so in their original format. The aim was to offer the ideas that informed California graphic design in its own time, such as this previously mentioned essay on California design by Alvin Lustig. And finally, the meat and potatoes, or I should say oranges and avocados of the book, are the multitude of featured projects visually celebrated and accompanied by short texts that expand on the designer and the project while offering a tidbit or two on what makes it Californian. But it is the images that are the throbbing heart of the book. Alone, without a word said about them, they needed to declare, "I am California design, and this is what I look like," or really, the whole book would fail. In other words, you had to see it to grok it, using the term borrowed from Robert Heinlein's 1961 novel, Strangers in a Strange Land. I also considered what were other ways of looking at this history that might offer new insights and perspectives. Now fairly commonly understood, information graphics reveal meanings differently than prose. Working with my ultra-talented grad student, Kat Katmere, we designed diagrams as departures from the other narratives. These revealed a different, surprising, and yet equally compelling story. In the sun-baked modernist diagram, the grand central station of influences became readily visible. Printer and publisher Ward Ritchie, Charles and Ray Eames, Alvin Lustig and his association with Art Center, and Arts and Architecture magazine helped to shape those who shaped a California modernism. The many industries, along with the players who shaped them, were revealed in this industry and indies diagram. Most significant was the vast influence of avant-garde filmmaker, animator, Oscar Fischinger, known for both his mechanical and formal inventiveness, and in his wake, the aforementioned and equally innovative John Whitney. The two were the paternity, or at least the DNA, of what evolved to become expanded cinema on the one hand, and more commercially, film and TV titles, TV commercials and promos, and special effects. In the alternative 60s diagram, we see a mashup of influences from the high and low, the commercial and utopian, Northern California and Southern California, where everybody and everything seems to connect to everything else. The hubs in this mapping of the era are psychedelic and rock concert culture, the counterculture, and the alternative press. And finally, in the California Girls diagram, we see how one generation leads to the next in an evolution that is still very much in the making, but with these pathways finding an important and vastly influential mothers, or in this case, sisters, in the Immaculate Heart College Art Department, first run by Sister Maggie Martin and later by Sister Corita Kent, who became so revered that she was the cover story on several popular major American magazines during the 1960s, lauded for her artistic production, her teaching, and her political activism. When it came to what work would be included in the book, I had to get over thinking that all I had to do was choose images. What I discovered instead was that the known world of California graphic design was minuscule. So rather than just picking the images, I had to find what might be a California graphic design. There was no normal way to go about it. It took becoming a detective, and it took the 10 years plus because there were no archives, no place where it was all gathered. I had to find it one piece at a time, using a sixth sense and vague recollections. I had to travel to unknown territories till the whiff of something fragrant caught my attention and then follow my nose. Meeting one person led to another, and there's the graphic design magazines like Print, Communication Arts, and Graphice that we had to go through one page at a time since they lack a digital index. It puts a big cramp on graphic design research if you don't even know what you're looking for. Again, the bottom line is there was no model. I had to invent my own. Needless to say, the book's aesthetic qualities, the way it looked, smelled, and felt in the hand, the experience of paging through it, needed to shine with California attitude and motifs. It was the featured project content that became the guide. Rainbow rolls. This ubiquitous motif for me emulates the California skies glowing in all their glorious hues. The split fountain effect was first seen in the Golden State in 1908 in the Zero Family Poster Party Invitation by the San Francisco-based printer Henry Taylor, the examples on the far left, but it became popularized as the counterculture phenomenon in the 1960s, evolving into the new wave on the far right of the 80s. And by the way, I just want to, this thing was so exciting when I first saw it. It's 42 inches long by about 18 inches wide. The audience was the 7 invitees to this party. Yeah, some of which are, you can see mentioned on there. Color, the flash and pop of pop, including the eye-popping fluorescent neon borrowed from industrial use that was made famous via the glowing street poster productions of Colby Poster Printing Company and others, as well as by John Van Hammersveld's Endless Summer poster. And then there are those psychedelic posters of the 60s, known for their optical effects, produced by colors whose rays simultaneously bounce against the optic nerve, causing weird vibrating effects. So those are not fluorescent colors that you see down the bottom left on this poster by Victor Moscoso. Those are actually processed colors. So it was the effect of how those colors hit the eye that produced this kind of vibrating effect. Every spread in the book showcases stars of the show, the examples of California graphic design, uniquely setting the stage for each of the featured projects, allowing them to shine. It was the work that informed each unique approach to the design. And then we come to the end. And a final reflection. There are the insightful words of Sister Corita Kent. They sum up for me the experience of making this book. While you have to be careful and treat delicately the things that you love, sometimes careful can mean full of care, that with things you deeply care about and driven by that passion, you just have to go for it. Something that I also believe is the very heart with which California graphic design beats. Thank you. Jenny, should I pass this around? I'm not sure. I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm happy to pass this around, too. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your conversation. It was really great. What was your favorite insight that you got while you were researching? It sounds like it was a really long process, but what did you get out of it? What was something special that you didn't share?
I think the thing that I mostly got out of it is that I really believed that there was a history out there and that I just had to find it. What I discovered was that I actually had to make it, and that my way of telling it was as legitimate as any other story. And what I didn't understand was that there are so few bona fide design historians that it's people from the field, like Kathy McCoy, who have created that history. And it is a creation, and it is a kind of creative work in and of itself. So, and especially as a graphic designer, I discovered it wasn't just the prose, you know, it wasn't just telling the story through text. It was really sort of opening up to a different way of telling the story. So, I mean, there was revelation after revelation. I mean, some of the scary stories were discovering about the rights issues, which alone took 3 years to clear the rights on these things. So if anybody ever tries to do this again, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. Yeah, just don't do it. Yeah. And it was funny for the studios, those were the people I was most afraid of. And so I spoke to a lawyer who's at one of the big studios, and he said, first I'd have to find your obscure book. Then I'd have to decide whether it was worth my time to go after you. And then what would the damages be? So yeah, that was a really big lesson to learn. And a costly one, too. Yeah.
Hi, Louise. Thanks so much for that. Really great eye candy.
Yes, eye candy.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm curious, what sparked you to engage in this 10-year odyssey to find out the history of this?
Well, I didn't start off thinking that this was a 10-year odyssey. Yeah, it's like, life happens, along the way. And the other thing is, well, is somebody really going to publish this? Like, what's going to happen? And that alone was like a huge odyssey. So it went through at least five publishers. Like, you name them, it went through it. And it would languish there for, I would say, about 9 months was the average before they'd come back to me and they'd say, so that graphic design, textbook that you're doing. And I'd go, textbook? There's no textbook. So as I was doing that, like, it started off with probably what's an average, like 12 to 18 page proposal. And then it grew to like a 24-page proposal. And then I think it was like a 50-page proposal. By the time I finished, it was a 124-page proposal. So almost a quarter of the book was completed. And it was a last sort of like a swan song effort that I said, I just have to see if this can happen. And this was probably 6 or 7 years into the process that I finally took it to a publisher in New York, and she looked at it and she said, great. She said, I'll take it. It was that, it just happened like that. But of course I had to deliver the manuscript, and that was probably another 5 years down the road.
Did you also have to take out that F New York quote?
Take it out? Yeah. Like of the book?
For your New York publisher, that F New York after
Oh, they delighted in that. Yay, yay. Yeah, absolutely. I really wanted a California publisher, though. I was hoping, Chronicle sat on this, and they were like, oh, that textbook, they were like really just like couldn't get their head around this. And to me, it wasn't about a California graphic design history. It really was as much a way of telling the story. And this is not a compendium. It's not complete. And those of you who are coming tomorrow, I'll talk about another approach that I have called making history, because so many people said, oh, but you forgot this and you forgot that. And it's like, I can't do that. There's most of the stuff has been forgotten or overlooked, or at least not included in my book. And so the next step is how we rethink how history is built. So I'm proposing a virtual collection wiki that I have underway. So I hope you will come and we can talk about that, because I think it's an important next step for preserving the history of graphic design, no matter where it's produced.
I've got a question for you. Over here.
You're next after.
Over here.
Yes. Hi.
So I was just wondering if you could tell us maybe a story or two about your encounters with designers along the way while you were putting this together. Did you get to meet any of your idols? Did you develop some new idols or anything like that?
Yeah, it was definitely about new idols, I think, more than anything else, because I realized how little I knew, how little had been included. A lot of people who, like, one of my main sources was Lou Danziger. And he's like 99 years old, I think, but has this like, just like this memory. He's experienced it all. So he would talk to me at length and say, well, you should talk to so-and-so and go see so-and-so. So I'd spend time with these people, and then 2 months later they die. So, yeah, it was that experience of kind of like revealing who was there and getting to meet them. It's so stunning how much has been either overlooked or forgotten. And really scary is that the design literature has not, the journals, the periodicals have not been digitally indexed. So I did it, we'll also talk about it tomorrow. I worked on a project with the design history students at Art Center to digitally index anything that had to do with California graphic design. And I'm like, well, who was this? What was this project? Like the governor of California actually did an initiative on good design in California. It's like, who would have known? Yeah. So, yeah. So we really, what we know of design, I would say in general, of graphic design, and my discovery was California graphic design, is a crumb of a crumb of a crumb. If you weren't published, if you didn't talk about your work, if you didn't enter it in design competitions, you could have been a genius, but didn't matter. So yeah, it was finding some of those. The one anecdote I'll say was John and Marilyn Newhart, who some of you may know of. John Newhart worked for the Eames. And I went over their house, and they he's deceased. Marilyn starts pulling out these boxes of the most incredible letterpressed and kind of handmade invitations that were nonstop, and everyone was drool worthy. And they never published this stuff. They didn't care about the competition, so there it is, sitting in a box. It'll end up in the trash. Yeah.
As one graphic designer to another, I've got to ask what high school was like for you.
And wait a minute, in what respect?
I had an intern in my office ask me that the other day.
Yeah.
And he was clearly struggling being a high school student and wanting to be a designer. And I realized that I was that way too. So I'm fascinated with you've isolated this thing, you've built it, you've doggedly dragged it from one place to the next and made sure that it got made, and you saw it through. That I'm kind of knocked out by all that stick-to-itiveness, and with that in mind, I got to, what was high school like for you?
Oh my God. Okay, so this is in the early 70s. There were the straights. Those were the cheerleaders and the academic achievers, and I was the druggie. Yeah. So, yes. And I will share with you that the first drug I ever took was LSD. Yeah, that just in a complete act of insanity, a friend and I bought it from a dealer in a head shop. Yes, and then went home, our little 14-year-old selves, and did LSD. Yeah, then I moved to marijuana from there. Yes. Yeah, but I do want to follow up. When I was ready for grad school after I'd been in professional practice for a good 10 years, and I was feeling kind of like itchy in what I was doing, and I was beginning to teach, and I knew that that was kind of a passion, and the technology was starting to evolve. I was in Boston, Massachusetts, where they were developing computers and computer software for image making, and I started to get involved with that. And Meryl Cooper was there, and she became a kind of mentor, and so it's like, oh, time for grad school. And the only thing I knew, I mean, I was educated in modernism. That's all I knew, and I thought if I can just do modern design really well, I will be accepted. And then in the interim, when I was going to go to Yale, and they were going through changes, and so I deferred, went out to California, say, oh, I'm going to go see some designers out there. I call up Lorraine Wild, who was a designer that I knew of, and really wanted to meet her and see what she did. And she said, oh, meet me at CalArts. I'm like, what's that? You know, so I drive up to CalArts, and she starts showing me around. And I'm going, oh my God, you know, I recognized in that place my rebellious spirit. You know, I realized that if I had gone to Yale, it would have been the death of me. Yeah. And, you know, I think that was the kind of big transformation. That was the 360 degrees of the drugs in high school.
So how has learning more about the history and evolution of graphic design influenced your current design work and your teaching philosophy?
Oh my. Okay, so girl to girl here. That gave me a sense of kind of confidence and bravado. You know, that I got over my sense that there was an authority out there that I somehow needed to listen to. So it gave me a sense that there was only the rightness that I had in myself and my sense of things, and if I was able to substantiate it in some way, at least for myself, that I could speak from a place of what I say goes, you know, that I could believe what I was saying. And I could also see that, you know, it sort of changed my teaching also in this kind of vision encouragement, and to get the students to a place where they could make statements of their own instead of feeling that they needed to replicate some other model that was out there. I mean, that's the nature of CalArts anyway. It's a kind of experimental art school. And so, you know, it really does encourage the students to define things on their own terms. But I just felt a kind of an affinity or an empathy in a different way. But now there's a sense of really like pushing and shoving in a different capacity. Did I answer all those questions? Yes. Yeah.
Well, this is almost the same question, but was there any particular, you know, body of work in the book that just resonated with you and continues to, that just kind of pushed you in a different formal direction?
I guess I got, you know, the stuff from Communications Company, I got really turned on by, because, you know, the defining thread through all of this was that I could see energy and enthusiasm coming out of a passion to communicate. So it was anything that I saw that just seemed to radiate with that sense of it. It wasn't just about its refinement. It was really just that the person, there was evidence of somebody struggling to say something, you know, and you could just feel that radiating energy on the page. So I think that opened up a lot of permission, but also a new place of judgment of work. You know, it's so easy now to make things that look refined on the computer, and that seems like good enough, but without that crazy energy of like trying to make an expression because there's something internal, that somebody has something to say or they feel passionate about what they're trying to talk about. you know, it just sort of lays there dead, and to me doesn't add anything to the conversation. But you know that. Yeah. Thank you all. Ooh, yeah. Okay.
Does everyone have their tickets out?
Yeah. Okay, get those tickets out.
You can just read like the last three.
Okay. 350. 350.
Oh, cool.
You got it. Yay! Yeah. All right. Okay.
2 more.
Three, 6, 5. Yay! Woo!
One more.
Okay. 383. Yay! Yeah.
All right, cool. So you guys can come up and
Yeah.
I have a pen for you. If you
Okay. Yeah. If anybody brought their book and wants it signed, or just got a book.
A piece of paper works.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have a pen. I also I have my recent batch of LSD cards. If anybody. Yeah, the tabs, the new set of tabs. Okay. Well, I guess we have a podium here. You can even have LSD tab bookmarks. We'll just get a few started here. Yeah, here you go.
Cool.